Warning: All Things Crime is a true crime production that may contain violent or disturbing material. Viewer or listener discretion is advised.
Well, there's creepy girls too. Don't forget that.
Yep, there are, but I bet you got a stat regarding how many, what percent of the creepy people out there there.
The only stats regarding male versus female offenders have to do with teachers. And in the educational system, 33% of the offenders in one study, and it's the biggest study that I'm aware of, were female. So 67% were male and 33% were female. So 1 in 3. It's not a tiny number. It's not something that you should disregard. In fact, I saw recently a bulletin, board or, big advertisement. This is what they do in Hollywood. They have these billboards with shows that are coming out soon. And there's one that's called A Teacher. And it had a female teacher and a teenage male student in the background. And I'm sure that the theme of that is that, she can't help herself and she falls in love with this kid, and they make it a love story like Barbara Walters tried to do with respect to Mary Kay Letourneau.
Okay, Jim. Hey, welcome to All Things Crime.
How you doing? It's good to see you, Jared.
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, especially now that I got you on.
Well, thanks. Happy New Year.
You too. Happy 2021. Let's pray that it's better than 2020, right?
Yeah. Hopefully. I don't want to jinx it, but hopefully.
Well, I don't want to say it can't be worse, because of course it could. But no, definitely. Who would have thought, 1 year ago when we were first ramping up for the new decade in 2020, and everybody was all excited about it. The economy was humming. And I mean, I had a couple of trips. I was over in Asia for toward the end of actually January. And then all of a sudden this COVID thing hit, and holy crap, the whole world got turned upside down.
Well, what's crazy is that 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, we sold a show to Netflix and produced that show and released it on January 3rd, 2020. And the name of the show was Pandemic. And we literally were approached by some epidemiologists, I think. How you say
that's
it?
A tongue twister there. Yeah.
And they said that, look, been 100 years and it's going to happen at some point. And we're monitoring all these different flocks of birds and herds of animals and all over the world. And we're looking to try to stop it before it turns into a pandemic. But we really need more preparedness, especially here in this country and some other countries. We sought this series based on the fact that it had been 100 years since the last pandemic, and there was very little preparation for the next one. And we were woefully unprepared, as we all learned in March of 2020. But you can see it on Netflix. You can see that we shot it the year before all around the world, and the different things that large cities and small town hospitals were doing and not doing to prepare for a pandemic. And I think that, now we know that this kind of thing is real and it's very deadly. And I mean, we are fortunate that the numbers near as bad as they were, but at least 350,000 Americans are dead, and many, many millions have been infected, and who knows what the long-term effects are going to be. So this is a real eye-opener.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. So I know you're there in LA, and you guys have got some pretty serious restrictions on you, and so but that's interesting as far as the show that you that you were talking about. I didn't know you guys produced that. I know you've
Yeah.
produced tons of other stuff like, geez, man, Criminal Minds and with the Memphis 3 and
Yeah, West Memphis 3, and
yeah.
we did Killer Profile, and we did a lot of audio series as well. Evil Has a Name, Call Me God. We just dropped Brooklyn North, and we're about to drop Where the Devil Belongs, and that is about the Unabomber case.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, there's a lot of things going on. We have 4 other titles that are going to be released this year, and hopefully we'll have a couple of new series on CBS, Paramount Plus, and Fox. So we're just waiting for the ability to get back to production.
Oh, very cool. You know, the crazy thing about Jim, you know, I was so excited to get on with you that I didn't even introduce you. You know, the audience doesn't even know who I'm talking to. So,
sorry.
Oh no, my fault. Hey, just for everybody that's watching or listening, I'm speaking with Jim Clemente. Boy, how do I introduce you, Jim?
I don't know.
You know, former FBI profiler and extraordinaire as far as once you got out of the FBI, started XG Productions, and you know I know I'm just butchering this, and so I'll tell
that's
you
all
what,
right.
I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself
Okay,
to
well,
everybody.
as you said, I was an FBI agent for 22 years, an FBI profiler, and I was my rank was Supervisory Special Agent, and I was a particular expert in the field of abductions and child abduction, homicides, and rape and serial murder, and those are all pretty grim topics, but just it was an honor to work in those fields and to help move the needle forward in terms of preventing those crimes, understanding the offenders, and trying to get ahead of it and trying to stop these things from happening. And also, when a child abduction happens, the research we did told us that you have to respond immediately and not wait for the typical 24 hours to determine what happened. That used to be something when, when a teenager went missing and so forth, or a young adult, they would say, well, we'll wait 24 hours. But we found out through our research that when a child is abducted and killed, first hour, 44% of them are gone. 73% in the first 3 hours and 99% in the first 24 hours. So waiting a day is extremely lethal. You have to work and determine what went on immediately and do concentric circle searches around the last known sighting and neighborhood canvases and car stops and all sorts of social media checks and everything that you possibly can immediately, because that's the only way you have a hope of saving the child's life. That's an area that I became an expert in. During the course of my work at the BAU, unfortunately, got cancer, and that was when I responded to the World Trade Center on 9/11, and myself and a whole bunch of cops and firemen and other FBI agents and some of the other construction workers that were there and other first responders were stricken with lymphoma, and some of my friends and colleagues didn't make it, and so I was lucky to have a bone marrow transplant. Johns Hopkins was an experimental stem cell transplant in 2004, and here I am today. So I'm very lucky. But while I was recovering from that, I got a call from one of the guys at work, and he said, "There's an actor here, and he wants to meet profilers." And he said, "Isn't there anybody in the FBI with a personality?" So I guess they had brought him around to different the administrators, and he wasn't really impressed. So anyway, called me, and I said I'd meet him. And I walk into this. I had to wear, at the time, it was very unusual. I had to wear a mask and gloves to meet anybody because I was still recovering from the bone marrow transplant. My immune system was almost non-existent at the time. And I walk in, and Mandy Patinkin walks up to me, and he said, "Hi, I'm Mandy Patinkin." And I said, "Of course you're Mandy Patinkin. You think I'm stupid?" And he just busted out laughing because I was so, I felt like a jerk walking around in what is now normal clothes or a outfit or a PPE. So we sat down. He asked me to tell him about my best case and my worst case, which you might recognize that as the name of one of my podcasts, because that did give me the idea for that podcast. To have law enforcement officers and attorneys tell their stories of the best cases and the worst cases of their careers, the things that hang with them even years after they retire. And so Mandy asked me, and I said, look, I'll tell you my best case. And I told him about a child abduction case where I was able to help save a 6-year-old boy 28 hours after he was abducted. And I said, I'm not telling you my worst case because it's too horrible. It's not for entertainment purposes. But afterwards, he picked up the phone, called Mark Gordon of Mark Gordon Productions and said, all right, I'll do the show, but you got to meet this guy, Jim. I want to base my character on him. So Mandy's character was based on me for the show Criminal Minds. And when Mandy left the show a couple of years later, we kind of spread my character out to the other guys in the show, like Hotch and Joe Mantegna, David Rossi character, and Shamar Moore's character. So I became a tech advisor on the show. Season 2, I wrote my first freelance episode. When I retired 5 years later, I came on to the show full time and made, some amazing TV, I would say, because they allowed me to write about things that educated people while they were being entertained. And that was a really important thing for me because I told you the statistics earlier about child abductions.
Right.
In the entire time I was in the BAU, 12 years, I taught about 60,000 cops and related professionals. It's a lot of people, 50 at a time most of the time.
Yeah, that's
but
pretty
in
much
that,
endless
yeah, that's a
training,
lot.
right?
Yeah. But I wrote my first scene of Criminal Minds. I put those statistics out, and Dr. Reed walks into sort of a green screen while he's telling the group these statistics. And now he's out on a playground, and there's 10 kids playing around, on swings and jungle gym and slides. And when he says in the first hour, 44% are killed, half of them disappear, and then 3 hours, 75%, 3/4 of the kids are gone. And then there's one kid left swinging, and he said after 24 hours, 99% are gone. And then the swing swings empty, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck. And I was like, wow, that visual image really impacted me. And in that 1 minute, I reached 18.5 million people. And by the time it goes through syndication, about 60 million people worldwide in 1 minute of television. And that told me exactly what I wanted to do when I retired, because I've learned a tremendous amount in the BAU and the FBI. Before that, I was a prosecutor in New York City. And all that culminated in a tremendous amount of knowledge that I really feel compelled to share with people because it'll help make this world a safer place. I don't want people to have to knock on the door and tell parents that their kid is no longer with us. That's just a horrible thing. And I'm hoping that, with these shows that we're producing, that we're doing some good with Hollywood's money.
Yeah, no kidding. And in fact, that's the number one reason that I started this video cast and podcast, whatever. I think most of this, especially the true crime genre, I think it's oriented around that. There's a lot of guys like you that have law enforcement experience, military experience. It's all about educating the general population, really what's actually out there. And
Right.
I talk to my kids and stuff that playing on the internet and they're playing Fortnite and all these other things. And I'm like, hey, listen, this is all fun and games, but
there's a risk.
Yeah. If somebody named Sally that you don't know starts talking to you about where you live and things like that, that should be a red flag. And
right.
Educating people is what it's all about.
And educating your kids is really
Yeah.
important, because I always say that, parents try to keep their kids safe by, sort of having this wall of protection around them and nurturing them and keeping them naive. But if you had a busy street in front of your house, you would never keep them safe by not telling them that it's a dangerous street, by not telling to stop and look both ways and wait for their mother or father to walk them across until they're old enough. You never not tell them about the risk. But when
Right.
it comes to sex crimes and sexual victimization and abduction, we don't tell our kids. And we think that's helping them, but it's not.
No.
Because you can empower them by telling them in a very supportive, loving, positive way that you're there for them and they could take these steps to help make their lives safer. And everybody's going to be happier and healthier that way. And as long as they know they can help participate in their own protection. And that's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Again, it's all about keeping kids safe, keeping families safe. And
Mm-hmm.
with the injunction of so much technology in our lives, it's just impossible to not factor in those kind of things.
Right.
And especially when there's so many creepy guys out there that.
Well, there's creepy girls too. Don't forget that.
Yep, there are, but I bet you got a stat regarding how many, what percent of the creepy
Well,
people out there there.
the only stats regarding male versus female offenders have to do with teachers. And in the educational system, 33% of the offenders in one study, and it's the biggest study that I'm aware of, were female. So 67% were male and 33% were female. So 1 in 3. It's not a tiny number. It's not something that you should disregard. In fact, I saw recently a bulletin, board or, big advertisement. This is what they do in Hollywood. They have these billboards with shows that are coming out soon. And there's one that's called A Teacher. And it had a female teacher and a teenage male student in the background, and
I've
I'm
seen that.
sure
Yeah.
that the theme of that is that she can't help herself and she falls in love with this kid, and they make it a love story like Barbara Walters tried to do with respect to Mary Kay Letourneau, who sexually victimized a 12-year-old boy repeatedly, and over and over and over again, went to jail 3 times, and then married him when she got out of jail. She passed away this past year, but I know that her victim, who later became her husband, suffered all sorts of emotional, psychological, and alcoholism problems. And it took him a while to realize, until their kids got to be 12 years old, he didn't realize how much she had taken advantage of him. But at that point, he did. So it's just, they are real offenders and they are a real risk to the community. We just have to keep our eyes open to both of them, both types.